Okay, so we're going to start with this working on an orange that is peeled and sitting on a table with kind of a dark background. And you'll see the image that I posted. Um, what we're doing here is painting after I've drawn the basic image. I'm putting in the background, I'm using a combination of burnt umber and raw sea, um, burnt umber and ultramarine blue, and a one-on-one combination of those two will give me almost a black color that I'm using in the back, and then I'm adding some white and bringing this out some into a kind of a gray area. We're going to use some other colors, some more blues, and then some reds and reflections that will affect this color. But right now I'm just kind of blocking in and getting this color uh, on the table generally. Now, what I like to tell people who are beginning to start painting is that you should always, the best that you can, paint all parts of your image together. That is, don't paint just the object, that the subject, and not paint some of the background. So as you're painting the background and or the foreground, you should also be painting the background. So in this case, painting the orange, and at the same time painting the table and the uh, shadows and reflections. I'm using the combination of the umber and burnt umber and ultramarine blue so that I can get kind of this neutral gray. And I'm adding either one more of the other as I want to vary the color more toward blue or more toward an earth tone. And I can add some other colors, and I will as we go. So as I work with the shadow, I'm putting in a little bit more of the blue color, and you can see it against that grayish um, tabletop. So everything that I paint in this during this time, I'm painting relatively roughly so that I can come back in. I want to get the image down and structured first so that we can see if the parts fit, and then you can come back in and refine it. That's the basic technique that I use, is to start rough, like you almost sculpting something out of clay or wood, and then refine it and refine it as you go. Now, I'm roughing in the shadows that are falling from the peel of the orange and getting some of the highlights in, the general highlights, so you get the idea of the way the, the light is falling on the object, the direction it's coming from, and how it affects the shadows that fall on the table. Um, the orange color of the orange will work well against the bluish gray of the tabletop. So you're using the complements to kind of get some color, uh, colored contrast to help make the painting, even though it's relatively low key in the background, it's going to have a real hopefully a good pop in terms of the light falling on the orange. So now I'm putting in a general color of use of cadmium red light and a cadmium yellow. I think this is a medium. And I'm putting this color in relatively rough, but I try to use the brush to paint the color on in the general direction of the form that we're working with. And so you can see with that area of color, the cadmium yellow, I have a stream of color where I have the red and then the yellow and the in between colors that I can just pick and choose as I like to. So I'm bringing this color up a little bit more on the orange, putting a little bit more yellow in it as I go up, and taking some care to use. And I'm also cleaning off the brush sometimes when I want to change the color. So when you're painting with acrylic, this is an acrylic painting. You can use water as your dilutant. So as you want to clean the painting or the paintbrush off to use another color that is different, you can rinse your brush in water. Sometimes I don't rinse the brush so much because I don't want the color to be completely different. It's going to be affected by some other color that's already on the brush. In that case, I may just use the paper towels just to change that. Okay, so I'm back to putting some of the orange peel and paint some of those colors using a little bit of the quinacridone or the alizarin crimson in this case, and my cooler red, and trying to go around the edge of the peel and paint the strokes along with the direction of the object. Adding a little umber, the burnt umber to the mixture, and trying to get kind of a little more of a dark color that still has a little bit of the orange in it, and placing that to kind of create a shadow area. Doing that on both parts of the peel. Okay, so now I'm going to create, while I have this basic color, as you're painting, if you mix up a batch of color that you're using for one area, if you see other areas in the painting that same color is useful for, you don't have to go completely to another color and come back to that later. Just put the colors in on the different areas where that color tends to be. Using paper towel to clean the brush off some. Going back in, getting a little bit more yellow, orange, and building up that surface for the peel, for the orange peel. And I'm using the color to define many of the other pieces or parts of the orange peel. Okay, the color should, cleaning the brush up again, the color should be placed on the object or the painting surface without mixing a whole lot. The mixture should come in the uh, closeness of the color of the different mixtures that you put on your palette. You don't have to scrub a painting a lot. That's what I think people do too often when they start painting is they like to smooth paint out too much. Um, there's some places you want to smooth the paint and blend it, but many times, more often, the variations you will get by painting solid colors that are closely aligned will give you a better effect. Okay, so I'm going across the top with the yellow lemon, and that gives me a separation from the kind of warmer cadmium colors that I have in the center. And I'll keep adjusting this to keep that light going. So the object is to paint in certain areas and then maybe work with the background some to clear up the uh, surface or the edges, and then go back and forth until you get the object placed in. So I'm putting some of the other yellows in, and I'm putting these colors in a what's called a scumbling kind of technique. That is where I have the color and I'm kind of blending it by having a drier mixture of the paint and then scrubbing it over the other area so that it almost makes a transparent um, coat without being a transparent that is actually diluted by either a medium or water. Scumbling is where you can mix colors by dragging one color, usually opaque color, over another color so that you have a blend of the two colors. And so, what the technique that I use is more where you kind of oscillate those two methods of painting. You glaze. I mean, you apply paint, then you can glaze sometimes, and then you can scumble sometimes. Much of what is being done here is just kind of direct placement of color and blending in between. If you keep your blending um, fresh, that is where you don't push it too hard, you'll be surprised how much um, when you look at an object you will blend just in your eye. So don't overpaint. I think if you err at all with the approach of putting color onto an object, it would be better to err on the side of uh, blending less and having more of a um, um, surface that is one color next to another or one color overlapping another so that you can get a surface that is not overworked. Okay, so I'm trying to make this color for the rind, which is kind of a yellow gray, and I'm putting those colors in. You'll notice that there's a lot of work to be done on the edges yet. And so as I paint, you'll see me working back and forth between inside of the object and then the outsides so I can keep refining the edges on the object. So I'm trying to make the rind peel of the orange more gray, so I can put some more of the color in. Painting a little bit of the orange for the peel at the bottom. So just kind of putting that orange color in and leaving a little bit of space in between that and the exposed portions of the lemon so that it looks like the peel has some thickness. Cleaning the brush again. Okay. So now I'm trying to mix a good orange color to place on the peel that I'm working with. Okay. Okay, so we are going forward. So I on some of these um, lessons that I do after this one, and I've done this in some of the earlier ones, there's certain areas that I would just speed up the video so you don't have to go through all of these. But this is for the beginning, and I want you to see as much as you can of how the paint is applied and how we kind of get some of the effects that we want to get. All right, so cleaning the brush again. Now we're going to make the paint on the top of the surface a little thicker. Sometimes, and it's the white, so you're kind of placing the color in so that it appears that the light is coming from the top and illuminating the object that we're working with. And any sudden jump of the colors like you see here will blend out as we go along. Okay, brush is clean again. Cleaning it off, just taking the paint off, leaving the residual paint from the last time on, because you can make a real subtle setup with these images. Okay, sometimes I'm going to just let you watch the painting and I won't have to talk through every part of it. So we'll just watch the painting and you can see what's going on. I think I'm getting ready to paint a little bit on the background. Okay, so we're painting the background some. Using that combination of the burnt umber and ultramarine blue with white, and using a little more of one color than the other to vary the color on the background. So the object is to have it appear that the light is shining on the top of the fruit, and the table is darker in the background than out up front because the light is kind of coming from the back and above. You can see the attempt to clean up some of these edges. So as I'm putting the color in, I'm paying a little more attention to the edge to kind of get rid of a lot of that little white. The next painting that we may do a color background, so that many times you can let a lot of the color from the tinting of the canvas help with the color that you are using in the painting. Here, because we are painting right on white, we have all of the um, background white kind of showing through on different areas. Cleaning the brush a little bit. Now I'm adding just a little touch of the cerulean blue places. This way you don't get kind of this monotone. You know, you want to vary that color. It adds some accent, and it gives you a little variation that helps um, with the color of the object and the painting. You can also see that what you should do maybe is to use the brush where you mix the color a little bit, and sometimes you rub or push down on the brush relatively hard and in one direction. The direction should try to mimic the surface and the way the uh, objects are placed on the surface. And sometimes you should just stroke lightly in order to make the blend get a little more sophisticated, let's call it. So here I am putting the white in, and I'm adding more white toward the dark area of the shadow. That's to make it look like there's a light source that is shining, and usually the lightest light will be against the darkest dark. You can see the stroke of the putting that color in, so you can kind of blend it back toward the shadow area. Now making the shadow a little darker makes the light go up some. If you have a bright light, then you'll have a dark shadow. If the colors are more muted, then the shadow will be more muted. So the contrast of colors will be the most pronounced in objects or close to the objects where the color is the brightest. Okay, so blending that color by taking the lighter color and pushing it back into the darker color. And sometimes just a small amount of a stroke can do what you need. So, just kind of work with the paint on top of the other paint and try not to um, kill the brightness of the color. Okay, so now I'm going to try to do something with the top of this orange, make it look a little, these colors look a little more natural in their gradation coming up off across the top. Okay, and some yellow and white, and working with the shape of the sections of the orange. Okay, using little dabs of color to form the highlights. So now you can see mixing some of the color, more yellow color. And as you put these colors in, you can always remember that you can come back in and glaze on top of them if need be. So you can be relatively bold with your application. You're just trying to make sure that you get a good feel for light falling on the object. Now I'm putting some color down into the core of the orange, and I want to get a kind of a neutral yellow brown, a yellow gray that will go down in that area. So I'm mixing up the umber, some yellow, and a little bit of ultramarine blue, and trying to draw the things that are going on in that core. Now you can see down in the bottom area where the peel of the orange is, there's still a lot of white. So we're going to try to get rid of some of that. Okay, so I'm putting some grays in on the middle part of the sections of the orange. And Okay, so I'm darkening up some of the bottom part. And okay, I'm trying to find a cleaner part of this towel. You know, okay. So cleaning off a new brush to use and putting some more of the yellow to make it look as though the object is getting a fair amount of light that's shining through a relatively translucent object, because the orange is an object that you can see through partially. We want to approach it so that it appears that the light that is shining through the orange is being radiated out of the core. So put in a little bit of the color in the reflection, put some of the orange color of the orange in the shadow that is reflected on the table. Okay, adding some more color, getting the feel of a relatively reflective table. The more that I put some of these highlights in the shadow, it appears that the table that is this orange is placed on is reflective to a certain degree. Okay, so we're going to, I think, put a little bit more color on the orange peel and try to work these shadows a little bit. I don't, so I'm going to put a little bit more color back on the palette. Okay, so we're putting a little ultramarine blue back on the palette. And mixing up kind of a grayish blue for the bottom for the shadow. Try to get that a little bit tighter. in the shadow to work. I'm trying to work with these edges some, get them best that I can. Um, there's some more painting that has to be done. I will make another video to deal with the follow the finishing of this painting. Okay, so trying to define some of the inside and outside of the orange peel. Looking for highlights. Okay, so now we're trying to push this a little closer.